Hey Tina, hey Roy, welcome to the Experience Dialogue. We are here as friends, experienced people coming in from various different backgrounds, sharing our experiences and then talking about, what is most important in the industry. And what I'm seeing is there's a lot of discussions around physical AI and how skilled trades will help physical AI. One of the things that we are releasing is also a white paper around this new collar, right? So the new collar renaissance, right? So the new collar is coming up. And both of you, Roy and Tina, both of you come in from a military background. Both of you have been veterans. Both of you come in from very deep operations background, right? So Tina, you have done Amazon and Fitbit and operations background, and Roy, you have been in many hardware industries. And right now, Tina, you are doing change management to youngsters, and Roy, along with many other things you do, you're also a researcher at TSIA. So it's a pleasure to have you both. I would love for Roy to introduce yourself a little bit, and then Tina to introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll jump right into how people can get involved into skill trades. Roy?
Absolutely. And so, yeah, so thank you. Glad to be here today. So my name is Roy Dockery. A primary role is I'm the Senior Director of Field Services, Industrial Equipment, and Healthcare Technology at TSIA. So I lead our benchmarking, most of our speaking engagements, webinars, and consulting with our members across a variety of of verticals and market segments, technology types as well. So I write articles and research papers and do a bunch of analytics on what we're doing in a broader industry. And then even outside of that, I do a lot of consulting around leadership and organizational change and transformation. So like Kay said, former military, former field technician, former field service and support services executive, and all the things. And then yeah, pretty well known around the industry for speaking and having an opinion. I've never been accused of not having an opinion. So that's the thing there. But over to you, Tina.
Well, Roy, that one thing we share. I've never been accused of not
Oh,
having
Tina.
an opinion either. So my name is Tina Dao, and I'm the founder of Liberated Leaders now, which we support for-profit, privately owned businesses and those that have between 3 and 1,000 employees. The reason I bring that up is because many of those businesses require skilled trades, which is part of what we're going to be talking about today. And then I also do some adjunct faculty work with Lenore Ryan, teaching strategy and change management, both that I do projects around AI and what it means now for all different industries and work that needs to happen. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And Kay, thank you for bringing two North Carolinians together on this podcast.
Yeah, so what this actually is the primary reason for doing something like this without absolutely any preparation, because what happens is it brings different kind of minds together and to talk about a particular topic. And then, of course, we are going to be interrupting each other, knowing all three opinionated people. So there's so much that's being talked about with respect to new collar, right? And how do we, I'm actually living in the Bay Area. I'm seeing people who are from Carnegie Mellon and Berkeley finish computer science and they are out of jobs. And on the other side, I'm seeing people from medtech or energy utilities or telecom where the skill trades are required and they are only able to fill in 10% of the jobs. And these are high paying jobs. So, Tina, you're working a lot with youngsters and you've been in this industry, you've seen this side, and you're also seeing the other side. How do you think we can bridge the gap so people are aware of these kind of roles?
Well, I think that we are in business. We just have to recognize we have to do some heavy lifting that I'm going to call my generation Gen X. Made some errors in how we were thinking about not only raising children, but in schooling. We pointed most people toward college and university, and they almost created this of skilled trades or whatnot that you're not as smart. You're not going to make as good of money. It's kind of looked down on. And we did that overall as a society. And now we're going to have to make some corrections, and business is largely going to have to do that. Because what I'm seeing, young people, they've been getting the message, do all these sports, do all these things, go to university, and then, okay, then go to grad school, but they have no experience. And what they haven't heard is that there are people in our generation and previous generations who live in neighborhoods that the doctors lived in, which was my lived experience. My dad had a car repair business and was one of the smartest people. He's a serial entrepreneur, and he was one of the most intelligent people you would ever come across. And he was working on cars at the point when he started seeing and saying, we now have more computers on these cars than the space than the first ship to the moon had. Right, and that was even in the late 80s, early 90s. So we lost the thread of saying, no, really smart people can be in these, and you can make a really good living. And guess what? There's less chance of a lot of what we're seeing in AI taking over those jobs, because you physically need to go and support things like I'm interested in what you see, Roy, of people actually being out in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing with, Roy is trying to bring in people from various different backgrounds into skilled trade, right? So, Roy, can you speak a little bit more about what are the new avenues that not just you are doing, but people can venture out into to bring some of these people so they are aware of this new collar jobs?
Yeah, and I like the term that you're using, that new collar, right? Because as Tina said, there was kind of like this hierarchy of like a blue collar job and a white collar job, but for some reason, people never put salaries beside those jobs, because a white collar job right out of college pays less than a blue collar job right out of trade school, right? So when we got past the internet bust of people having stock options and things that let you get wealthy really quickly, when you look at those jobs, there isn't much of a difference. And then the upward mobility of the skilled trades as you grow in more experience is definitely helpful as well. So the one thing is, like, when you talk about the field service or the skilled trades industry, there are a lot of false assumptions, especially once you move outside of plumbing, HVAC, and like refrigeration. So, and like electrician. So the skilled trades that require licensing is one of the things I think that was always presented to the world, right? Like, you can be a plumber, you can be an electrician, you can work in construction, but those are all things that require licensing, apprenticeships. And then there was this an overall decline in the country of this like union trade school development, right? So what used to happen is a lot of field service organizations would hire most of their talent from the unions or from the military. So then you had less people joining the military, you had less people joining unions, and so you still have this group of people out there who like to tinker, who work on their own cars, who build their own computers, have either inherited the skills from their parents, learned them from YouTube videos. But the problem is nobody knows that this industry exists. And even from a corporate perspective, most of these industries they're in the process, but they're late in shifting from experience-based to skills-based recruiting, right?
Mhm.
So one thing that I found, because like when you hire somebody right out of the military, they have no experience in your industry, right? Like they're going from, like, to use the Navy, they're going from a boat and you want to put them in a hospital. So it's like, that they're not in the same environment, but what they have is the skills, right? They have the verified skills, or you even know that they have the aptitude to learn something that they didn't know before. No one joins the Navy knowing how to work on an F-35 or a
Yeah.
submarine or an aircraft carrier or like these old analog radio systems, but you learn. So what you really learn from a military employee is that they have the ability to learn. But a lot of companies need to go back to like a farming methodology of talent, right? Like, we spent a long time hunting. So we just hired from our competitors, we hired from the military, we hired, from other areas of the industry. But to everyone's point, those people are retiring now, and we haven't been consistently like restocking that pond, to use that analogy. So now it's like we actually have to grow that talent. So organizations need to get reconnected with trade schools. Organizations need to have entry level roles. that require a minimum amount of experience, and they have to find ways to validate skill sets. So whether that's like technical interviews or you like some basic skills assessments, because a lot of people have skills, especially young people now are learning on their own. And I've had this conversation before with a director of mine who was complaining about the next generation because his son was a young millennial. And he was like, well, I don't think he has the discipline to work in field service. He's really not into to tech, and he doesn't know what he wants to do. But I asked him, I said, what does your son own that you've ever had to have fixed for him? And he was like, nothing. I was like, so your son fixes his own phones, his own laptops. He modified his own car. He works on his own vehicle. So he has electromechanical skills, software skills, mechanical skills, and critical thinking and troubleshooting. But just because he's like 19 and didn't come about it the way that you think, I'm like, he sounds like a perfect candidate for me, for somebody that we would hire. But we always look for experience on a resume, not necessarily skills. So people are learning skills in a very non-traditional way. So companies have to learn how to promote the fact that, like, hey, if you learned about our technology online, and you're seeing this a lot with manufacturers who are recruiting on TikTok because they know people are coming to their YouTube channel and getting instructional videos. So they're like, if you're working on our equipment, we have job openings. So like using social media for even people who are following the brands that they use or that they work on or that they may install. But it's really shifting from experience-based hiring to skills-based hiring, and then retooling their job posts, retooling their recruiting methods, and reaching out to people not based on 2, 3, or 5 years of experience, but really being specific, like, can you do these things? I don't care if you've done them at a job, but like, can you work on a computer? Can you work on something mechanical? And then being able to assess people that way. So I think the field service industry, even support industries, that's what we're going to have to do with the next generation, because most of them are learning on their own, where Gen X and baby boomers, we had all of these codified programs, right? We had apprenticeships, we had journeyman programs, where now people are learning on their own, but the skills are definitely there. We have a experience gap, but I also think AI can really help us close the experience gap if we get the people with the right skill set in the door.
Yeah,
And I just want to feed off of that a little bit, Roy. Like, first of all, I love what you're pointing out. And one of the things I talk to my students about is the most important thing that you need as a skill is learning how to learn, because everything is moving way faster than it ever was before. And so that retooling for companies. I've been working with someone here locally and talking about, we need companies, and we need to think about how do we bring the apprenticeship concept back, because people need, they not only need the technical skills and those and critical thinking skills, they also need the emotional intelligence skills that come from that sort of leadership that happens in more apprenticeship. And maybe we come up with a new term like new collar something, so that it can be hip and cool, and people can start to adopt it. But it's how do we look for people who know how to learn and who are trainable and coachable, and then say, as companies, we have to cultivate and farm, not just hunt.
That's very true. And whatever we are talking about comes behind, whatever Roy or Tina or I'm talking about comes in with data, right? We know people are retiring. We know 60% of the people are retiring. We know only 10% of the jobs in med tech is getting filled in. And interestingly, actually, the apprenticeship comment that you made, Tina, medtech I'm finding it very good with respect to calling apprenticeship. And this new collar is not a term that I coined. I think one of our customers, Nokia, has coined that, and we loved it. We love that it's the right thing to do. And if you think about AI, to the comment back into what Roy was mentioning, right? AI has so much potential even within data center support and service, right? So we are building billions and billions, we are pouring billions of dollars into all of these data centers, and that requires telecom, that requires medtech, and all of that. And I think the industry is also adopting from the time we saw how things are going to how right now we are constantly talking to leaders who are condensing the training time. So gone are the days where it would take 2 years to learn an equipment and then you go out into the field. Now it's like I finished biomedical engineering, I have fixed my own equipment. How can I get to the field in 2 weeks, right? Or in 1 week, right? So AI can continue to train me as I'm doing the job, right? And from that angle, how do you see AI impacting the roles from a student perspective is what I would love to hear from you, Tina, and from Roy. I would love to hear from a company perspective, right? So how do companies get ready for something like this? One of you can go first.
Well, I'll talk about students a little bit. One of the things that why I'm really proud to be doing that adjunct faculty work at Lenoir-Rhyne is Lenoir-Rhyne is a small private liberal arts college. And the College of Business and Economics recognizes that to have students come out who are going to be competitive, they have to totally up the game around AI, and it has to be just integrated in everything that they're doing, which much of academia has, and I'm intentionally using academia, not trade schools or something else, has intentionally had a lot of worries about and not always fears about how do you embrace this and kind of purity of thought. And so part of what I'm saying, we have to integrate it so that again, it's that learning how to learn, and incorporating, even my change management class, the students are creating tools and agents that are, none of them are computer programmers. None of them are. But they're creating agents for faculty members and for fellow students to be going and getting information. And as you were talking, Kay, about even using AI to help people keep learning, that's actually what we have as a project with undergrad students right now, and how quickly they went from they've never done anything like this ever before to now we have, within 9 weeks, they have their first prototypes for each other that they're starting to use. So the generation is, they can, when we put into them, they can pick the stuff up and see like, oh, now how do I use that? And I think that across the board, we can look at that for students.
Yeah, definitely. Nothing better than doing and learning.
That's right.
Roy?
Yeah, and I think for companies, there's a couple of aspects of it. So one, from a field service and even from a support services remote perspective, we over the years, because of the IoT and telemetry and the data analytics surge, we put a lot of data collection, mundane, non-technical responsibilities on technicians and on support personnel. Right. So we wanted them to be data collectors. We want them to gather asset information. We want them to ask customers 10,000 questions. We want them to do site surveys. So we want them to do all of these things that have nothing to do with actually fixing the equipment and talking to the customer about their primary problem. And Kay knows I wrote like the state of field service for 2026. I also wrote the state of industrial equipment and healthcare technology. So the two things that I see that companies need to do with AI is, one, like leverage AI to automate and remove any friction for technicians. Like it creates an opportunity to actually go back to a time that I think customers and technicians enjoyed more, which your technician's primary job when they came on site was to talk to you and fix your problem, right? Like it wasn't all of this other stuff. The other stuff adds value to the product team, the sales team. But for the technician, the best thing is talk to the customer. What were they trying to accomplish? What happened with the equipment that stopped that? Then fixing that problem and then walking them back to the stage in the process where they're being productive, right? So I think AI creates that, whether it's agentic AI that's no-click workflows in the background, right? As they check different things in their work order, or if they're taking photos and computer vision is pulling the asset information, right? Like being able to have, and I know you talk about the, right, like your AI, like as your intern, right? Like It's like a technician can have a team of virtual assistants, and you got a virtual assistant handling your parts reconciliation, and you've got a virtual assistant handling your work order notes, and a virtual assistant handling asset information. But while all that's going on, you just get to interact with the customer, right? You get to be present and not kind of in your tablet or heads down in some Google lenses and all of this other stuff that makes you like you're there, but you're not fully present for the customer. And so I think that's one side of it. The other side of it is on the onboarding side, right? And you mentioned it, Kay, like if now, right, I used to walk people through every scenario. I made them touch every piece of equipment. I gave them, which they forget it anyway, because if you don't put it into practice within 7 days of learning it, your brain doesn't tend to retain it. But we train them on everything instead of getting them ready and then equipping them with a tool that'll allow them to continue to learn as you go. And so if people have reliable AI that can help with diagnostics and resolution intelligence and searching technical manuals and presenting guidance on how people can resolve it, when you hire people that have the right skills from a soft skills perspective and from a mechanical, electromechanical aptitude, you can continue to bring those people in, like you said, give them 2 or 3 weeks of training, and then you can gradually introduce them to either equipment or customers with greater levels of complexity so that they have time to build up their confidence. But one of the things that I've written an article on, right, is how you use AI to accelerate time to value for your customer, for your employees, right? So like you want to use AI to say, you know what, if I can train somebody, bring them in, give them high level operational information, then I'm going to put them on maintenance. So, right, that's revenue generating. But if you can get them on maintenance within 2 to 4 weeks, like that technician is now earning their own, and you can take them from maintenance to installations to corrective maintenance and keep building on that as they get comfortable with the normal operation of a system, interacting with the customers, their internal processes. But then they become more confident in troubleshooting because if you know how something works, right, then you know how to restore it back to normal functionality. So I think those are the two areas, but because they're gonna need it, right? We need to hunt, we need to stop hunting and farm our own talent. So in farming that, we can utilize AI to help bridge the experience gap because the reason it takes 2 years or a year is because we're trying to train people on everything, right? And now if I've got effective AI that can bring me the best
Just in time
information, it's the
training.
most up to date, and it's just in time, then I don't
Yeah.
need to train you on every piece of equipment because half of it you're not going to see for a year anyway, right? Like because of the market that you work in or because of the customer base where we primarily need your support. So I think those are things that I know companies are doing and that I also see as opportunities for that to continue to grow with companies and organizations that are leveraging AI to help with this skilled trade gap that we have right now, being created by the silver tsunami, right, of the 60+% of people in that the generation retiring. So.
Yeah, the thing is, Roy has written a amazing book around this, and that's why he's quoting about the articles and stuff. And a shameless plug, but a relevant one, is he has also written a foreword for my book, where I talk about the agents working with each other, doing complete workflow automations, right? And that brings up saying everybody who's coming in this generation is going to be starting to work with people as well as like silicon employees, as well as digital co-workers, as well as silicon co-workers, right? So it's going to be the first generation of people who are going to start off their job managing as a manager, managing AI agents. They're going to be interacting with AI agents as well as humans. And I think this generation is perfect, having grown up able to do that system of agents kind of interaction up level. All of us who are working, right? All of us in the workforce. So, any thoughts on this, Tina?
Yeah, I think I agree
I
with
think what
you.
I'm also asking is, how does soft skills play a role in when you're talking to digital silicon employees as
Yeah.
well as digital employees and all of that
Well,
stuff, right? Yeah.
well, it's really funny that you asked that, Kay, because part of what we've done in my company, we've been talking about AI since we started as a company, and one of the things in just giving some of the basic conversation, because where I live in North Carolina is not Silicon Valley, right? And people have been really afraid of it. We did a study and we actually found the humans are not ready for AI. But in doing that, a lot of our kind of education and helping people to try to understand, to at least start to engage. One of the things that we said is we actually don't like the term prompt engineering. We think it should be prompt communicator, because all of these things, that whether it's agentic, all these things where you're actually interacting with a silicon or a digital coworker, as you said, Kay, the kinds of skills that you need to be a really effective leader and coworker with humans is what you need. These things as well, right? Being clear about expectations, what role, what role you're playing, what role they're playing, when things are needed, how you want to communicate and work with each other. Those are, I hate the term soft skills, because they're really the really hard skills. They are the human skills, and those are the skills that help make you a better prompt communicator, as well as interacting with humans. And so I see that, again, I keep telling my students, there are two most important things that you're going to need in your career: learning how to learn, and understanding that your emotional intelligence is the piece of intelligence you can grow your entire life, and that you should consistently be working on, because those soft skills are connected to our emotional intelligence.
Your students are so lucky to have someone like you, Tina, to be able to, I still remember the strengths training that you brought into Amazon, and you pioneered that to bring in your strengths into the workforce and how a team can work with each other. I learned a lot from that. So, yeah, Roy, the same thing, right? So the same question from a different angle, right? So how do we, with this level of soft skills and stuff, the way we are going to be evaluating people, the way we have to be evaluating AI agents too, because it's a digital workforce, just like how we have a rec, we have to go ahead and do performance reviews on them too, right? So how well they are performing and all of that. How do you think it will take how do you think leaders can be ready for something like that in the industry?
Yeah, and I think so. One, it has to be identified within a culture, like what behavior you expect, right? So like we talked about skills-based recruiting. The other side of that is what we need to be looking for instead of experience is that you need to learn how to identify the behaviors you want within your organization, right? So companies need to have behavioral assessments that are reflecting like, this is the type of communication. How does this person want to be supported? Because you're going to put them in a team, right, where they've got to be supported by these digital or silicon employees, but then they also have to communicate with customers and then colleagues and management as well. So, like, again, we've been hunting, right? So there's some assumed behavior and experience there, but a lot of people have never actually codified what the organizational behavior is they expect, right? They haven't really documented what their cultural norms are, especially around communication, conflict resolution, how to deal with the escalations and things of those natures. Those are all things I've walked organizations through establishing, but like establishing those cultural norms, assessing for those behaviors during the recruiting process, and then also recognizing and rewarding those behaviors through your performance appraisals, right? So like even if you have right, do you have a behavioral objective in your performance appraisals for communication? Instead of just saying, oh, well, he's not, he doesn't, or he or she isn't, they're just not great at talking to people. That's not a good excuse, right? Like you need to get better at doing it, or you need to find a job where you don't need to talk to people, right? If it's a part of your job, it needs to be measured. But putting communication, teamwork, and things of those natures into, because most of our performance appraisals are a mixture of metrics, like objective things that you can measure, and then some behaviors. But a lot of times they're not the behaviors that are reinforcing the culture that we're trying to maintain within an organization, right? And this is going to be a cultural shift because one, it's a lot more empowering to the technicians, right? You're giving the technician these virtual interns, right? These digital interns, which also requires the managers to let go of some of their control and allow technicians to operate with more autonomy. So even when I speak about implementing AI, people always say like, oh, well, the technicians, it's not normally the technicians. It's normally the managers who don't actually want to let go of the control and then allow the technicians to have more freedoms to do things without like a human in the loop or like a confirmation from their bosses, right? So it gets pushed back up to leadership that it was the technicians. And normally it's the manager who doesn't want to change their workflow and the way that they oversee their team because AI should provide more autonomy, or AI should provide more flexibility. It should provide more power because there's more things at their fingertips. And you set that up to where there's a decision making capability, right? Where they can essentially help the customer a lot more when they're physically on site. But I think setting that cultural norm and then establishing like a behavioral assessment as you're bringing people in helps you bring in the right people, and then you can kind of better mold those soft skills. But it's much harder to fire somebody because of a behavior that you don't specify or an expectation that you don't set than it is a technical competency issue, right? So organizations need to really invest in what is the behavior that we need, not for where we are, but for where we're going. And then let's make sure that we're evaluating our technicians through those lenses, whether those are remote support personnel or field support personnel, because those profiles, because of those digital agents, are going to be a lot more similar, right? As far as the type of things that they're managing and the level of knowledge that they're going to be required to have as well.
Yeah, I always talk about we need people of various attitudes and aptitudes in AI, and it's a pleasure because both of you are very talented professionals and both of you are coming in with a lot of experience. And at the same time, we are also working to bring in the next generation of people into these new fields. Roy, I know you're working with people from the prisons to people who are in food equipment, all the way to many, many, many industries, right? So Roy and I are conference buddies. We keep bumping into each other in multiple conferences. So that's why it's amazing for me to continue this conversation. So what I would love for both of you to consider this as a part one, and I would love to have a part two scheduled where we dive into change management and look at that a little bit more closely. So thank you both for your time, Roy and Tina. We'll get this part two going. So
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.